I cannot believe how much the Rays just got back in their trade for Zach Eflin. They just traded Zach Eflin to the Baltimore Orioles for 3 prospects, 2 of whom are in the Orioles' top 20. And the Orioles have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. They have now made 2 trades in 2 days. Last night, they traded away Randy Arozarena to the Seattle Mariners, who also have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. One of the guys that got back in that trade is already ranked now as the 6th overall best Tampa Bay Rays prospect. That guy is, I'm looking at their list right now, Brody Hopkins, right-hand pitcher. High draft pick, a lot of upside. And the other guy that got back in that deal is their 12th overall ranked prospect, Aiden Smith, which the Rays also have and always have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. So the fact that 2 guys they just got from Randy Arozarena are already ranked 6th and 12th respectively in their farm system is really impressive. For 2 pieces who they would have had to have traded either way, or at the very least they were looking to get rid of either way. I mean, I made a video in the offseason talking about how I think the Rays are, they have the best business model in the majors, I think, for consistently competing. I mean, some people might say, oh, well, you know, why are they not having the best year this year? I mean, for one, they're not having that bad of a year for a down year. They're 1 game over 500. They're 4th in the AL East, one of, if not the best divisions in baseball this year. And they are technically still in the wild card race, although trading away some of these better pieces of theirs is signaling that they are kind of punting on that a little bit. Although, honestly, they might not even be that worse off, because the Rays, they tend to have strength in numbers kind of teams. So any individual piece of theirs isn't disposable per se, but isn't as important as, like, you know, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are to the Yankees. And I'm a Yankee fan, by the way. Or Shohei Ohtani is to the Dodgers or something like that. The Rays tend to have more even talent spread throughout their different positions. Very deep pitching staff. So giving up Randy Arozarena and Zach Eflin might not even have that big of an impact on their wins and losses this year. Certainly not going into next year. Because the thing is, I mean, the Rays got very unlucky last year. They lost their best position player and highest paid player on their whole roster in Wander Franco for very unfortunate reasons. Wander Franco will probably never play again. And he doesn't deserve to play again. And 3 of their best starting pitchers, if not their 3 best starting pitchers, Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, and Jeffrey Springs, all went down to injuries. So it was predictable that this year they would probably slide back a little bit. I mean, what other team in baseball could lose their best position player and 3 out of their 5 best starting pitchers and still be that good the next year? But they have been pretty decent. They're 1 game over 500. They are, flipping over the Dodgers here, they only have 10 less wins than the Dodgers, who spent the most ever in an offseason, over $1 billion. The Dodgers have the highest payroll in baseball, at least by total payroll. I don't know in terms of average payroll, like per year, but that's because they deferred so much of Shohei Ohtani's money. Obviously, they spent $700 million on just Shohei Ohtani. But they have a payroll that's well over $300 million. The Rays' payroll is well under $100 million, and they just shed about $26 million for next year, getting rid of Zach Eflin and Randy Arozarena. So the fact that the Rays are able to consistently field teams this good with as low of a payroll that they have is unlike any other team in baseball. And other teams are trying to replicate that model for sure. The Orioles have tanked for a while and try to turn themselves into the Rays, but this is a big difference between the Orioles and the Rays. Like the Orioles, when they get in a position where they think they can win a World Series, them and most of the winning teams in baseball, they tend to trade away a bunch of their best young prospects at the trade deadline. They tend to overpay players, and they try to compromise the future for the present, be as good in the present as they can possibly be, while automatically likely being a little less good as they would be in the future. Trading for Zach Eflin, a little surprising to me that they gave up as much as they did. I thought that they would, any team trying to get Zach Eflin would either pick up Zach Eflin's $18 million for next year or give up a decent prospect package for him. I didn't think there'd be a team that would do both. And so the fact that the Orioles are going to pay Zach Eflin $18 million next year, and they gave up 3 pretty darn good prospects for him, that is not an insignificant pay for Zach Eflin. And the Orioles have been linked to some of the best available trade pieces on the market, people like Garrett Crochet and Tarek Skubal. It's likely that they will still make a bigger trade than this to upgrade their rotation. I think it's probably likely that Zach Eflin is going to be an and, not an or. They might get a big pitcher and Zach Eflin, which they could use because their rotation has kind of struggled all year long and is dealing with some injuries. So it makes sense to me that they want to get 2 pitchers, not just 1 pitcher at the trade deadline. But to give up that much for Eflin, considering that the Red Sox were able to just swipe James Paxton from the Dodgers for virtually nothing, not even a top 30 prospect, and you're giving up 2 top 20 prospects to get Zach Eflin, and you're going to pay him $18 million next year, which I think is a bit of an overpay. No disrespect to Zach Eflin. He's been a very solid starting pitcher for years, but I just don't see him necessarily being that much of a meaningful upgrade to what the Orioles already have in-house. And certainly, I think that'll be a little bit of an overpay next year. But amazing deals for the Rays, shedding $26 million in salary next year and getting a bunch of really good prospects. And you look at their roster for the rest of this year, right now Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen, 2 of their best young starting pitchers, are on rehab assignments. They'll probably be getting Springs back in the very near future, maybe even next week. They just got back Shane Baz, who was also injured for a couple of years now and is pitched a great game against the Reds today. You look at their rotation for next year, you can never assume perfect health, but right now it's shaping up to be something along the lines of Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs, Taj Bradley, who's one of the best and most talented young pitchers in all of baseball, and Ryan Pepio. So they already have a full rotation, it looks like, on paper for next year, and a number of prospects in AAA that could help out. And now a bunch of free salary as well if they wanted to reinforce some of their options. So losing Zach Eflin is really no sweat off their back. As far as their outfield goes, Richie Palacios and Ahmed Rosario have higher wins above replacement than Randy Arozarena this year anyways. Randy Arozarena, at best, he's been around an 800 OPS player. He doesn't grade out that well defensively. He's a little overrated on the base paths because while he will steal, he's stolen as much as, 30 stolen bases in a year. He also has a very high caught stealing. His steals to caught steals ratio is terrible. So I always thought he was a bit of an overrated player. Obviously, he's very exciting and dynamic, and he does a bunch of different things. But realistically, you're talking about getting rid of a guy who's like a 3-4 WAR player at best and is one of the most expensive players on your roster, and you have a bunch of internal options to replace him. Trading him was really a no-brainer. And this is why the Rays are good every single year. They really never have a terrible season. There's no team in baseball that is more immune to a terrible season than the Rays. Unlike the Blue Jays, for example, who, are 10 games under 500 this year, despite kind of keeping pace with the Rays and the Red Sox and teams like this. Because the Rays, they just don't let guys walk. Anytime there's a guy whose contract is coming up, who's like a pretty solid player that they can get value back for, they get value back for them. And they make sure that they always have one of the very best farm systems in all of baseball, one of the highest payroll flexibilities in all of baseball. And critics of the Rays will say, well, that's because they don't go all in. So, you might, stay above 500 like that, but when are you going to win a World Series? Well, again, they made it to the World Series in 2020 against the Dodgers, so not that long ago. They've been in a World Series more recently than the Yankees have, the Orioles have, the Blue Jays have. Can't remember the last time the Red Sox made it to the World Series. But granted, they haven't won a World Series yet in their team's history. They haven't been around very long. I mean, you're basically talking about post-2000s from when the Rays could have theoretically won a World Series. Yankees haven't won one since 2009. Blue Jays haven't won one. Orioles haven't won one. The Red Sox have had a very good century, obviously, but they've had some stinker teams lately, whereas the Rays are just kind of consistently either in the middle or the top of the division. They've won the division twice in the last 5 years. Like I said, they made it to the World Series against the Dodgers. But who knows? I mean, if they didn't lose their best player, Wander Franco, and 3 out of their 5 best starting pitchers, and Shane Baz, one of their best starting pitchers the year before that, who knows how good they could have been. They decided to reset this year, but even in a reset year, they are 1 game over 500. They're in the playoff hunt. They're very competitive, and they're going to be likely very good again next year when they get all those injured players back and they can go out and sign another big piece. And they have a lot of top 100 prospects that are knocking on the door of making their big league debuts. And a World Series will come at some point. It's just inevitable for a team that is this consistently competitive and making the playoffs as consistently as they do. You will get your World Series, Tampa Bay Rays fans. I'm confident that will happen, and it'll be interesting to see who gets a World Series first, the Rays or some of these big spending teams like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Astros, the Mets, of course. Who are, pushing $400 million in payroll just in some cases to suck like the Mets have the last couple of years. Although they've been playing, they don't suck this year. Like they have been playing a lot better lately, but still below expectations, still, not favored to win a World Series. The Yankees were terrible last year. Credit to them for a big rebound this year, but I don't necessarily think that their base roster structure is any better than the Rays. I feel like they've gotten a little bit lucky this year. Give credit where credit's due. It's not just luck, but who knows what's going to happen with them next year. But it'll be interesting to see the two business models juxtaposed against one another. But the Rays are just as good as the best organizations in baseball performance-wise. Over the last decade or so, if you look at their track record. And while spending under $100 million a year in payroll, that is very impressive, and it's because of trade deadlines like this. There's no organization in baseball that is better at handling a losing season than the Rays. When they lose, they turn it into a win by getting value back. For their players, having the opportunity to get rid of players who they want to get rid of anyways. And they're not even losing yet this year. They're 1 game over 500. So good stuff for the Rays. They got a lot back for Zach Eflin, Randy Arozarena, and we'll see who else they trade at the deadline this year.